Hi guys, my name is Shane Cuthbert and I'd like to welcome you back to Lesson 18 of the Change Your Life series. In this lesson, we're going to talk about and focus on learning how to praise ourselves, okay? So in the last lesson, we talked a lot about what praise does as we're, children, and what it does to us when we become adults, okay? And the way in which different types of praise can change the outcomes for us, okay? But what I really want to do in this lesson really is actually get to a point where we can not only sort of, know the theory that we learned in last lesson, but take that theory and turn it into something that we can practice, okay? So this lesson is about how we can praise ourselves better so that we can achieve our goals and have better outcomes moving forward. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. Let's get into it. So towards the end of the last lesson, I asked you what was the difference, okay, between the two types of praise that both of the students in Group A and Group B got. And at the start of the lesson, I asked you what you thought those kids in the second group were told that was different. The students in Group B weren't praised for their intelligence, okay? So they weren't told, you're amazing, you're super smart, you're intelligent, you're sort of king of the world sort of thing. The way that they were praised differently is they were told, well done, okay? And they were praised for their efforts. So the teachers in this particular study said, you did a good job, you worked hard, you achieved well, but they really focused on not the achievement, but they focused on, you really had a really good crack, you tried your best, and that was the difference. So instead of rewarding the outcome and basically getting praise based on that outcome, they were praised for the process. Okay, so they still achieved good results, okay? Remember in the first study, Group A and B, they both passed the test, okay? They were both set up to experience success. Group A was told that they were amazing. Group B was told you did a good job. They were rewarded for the steps, their effort, and their hard work. Okay, you really worked hard on that. Well done. I could really see that you put, your effort into that. You really tried hard. Well done for that. So that's how, to answer the question in the last episode, that's how they were praised differently. So you might be asking yourself, what's the difference? Okay, what's the difference between being praised for our results and being intelligent and just being praised for our efforts? So I'm going to tell you what that is. Now, the moment those children in Group A were praised for their intelligence, their attention and their focus is then drawn to something that's beyond their control. Okay, now, you can't control your intelligence. You're only as intelligent as you are. So if someone tells you that, well done, you're great, you're super intelligent, that's something that you can't really change, okay? You are either born like that, you are just the way you are, okay? You have a fixed mindset, that your intelligence isn't going to change moving forward. When the students in Group A were offered the opportunity to do another test, okay, just for fun, and the 67% of them said, no, we don't want to do it. What happens is they're offered an opportunity to take on a harder challenge. They didn't do it because they were scared that they were going to lose that intelligence, okay? They were scared that because their intelligence was fixed, they thought, I don't know, because if I do this extra, like right now I'm intelligent, I've been praised, everyone said I'm really good. If I take that step, if I take that jump to, do another test and I happen to fail this one, I'm not going to be intelligent anymore. I'm not going to be praised. People aren't going to think I'm good anymore. So it's almost like what we talked about in a couple of lessons ago when we were talking about people's fear of success. The reason why sometimes people don't try things or they don't attempt things is because they're scared of failure, but they're also scared of success. Now, in this case, these students, they were scared of not being intelligent anymore. So imagine being a child and everyone around you is telling you and conditioning you to believe that you are intelligent. Well done, you are so smart. What that does is that creates a fear. That creates some anxiety within that child where they have to struggle now with thinking, okay, what if I do this and I'm not intelligent? My whole identity is going to come crashing down. You know, everyone believes that I'm intelligent. What if I'm not intelligent anymore? You know, and that fear and anxiety leads us to get to the point where we would just like to play it safe, okay? That's how our mindset is conditioned to become fixed and stay fixed, okay? It doesn't grow because in order to grow, we need to take the risk and we need to take the challenge and we need to reward the steps and we need to be praised for the process and the commitment and, you know, the effort that we put into something. The reason why the children in Group B were able to achieve better results is because they were praised for their effort. Now, when we are praised for our effort, we develop a growth mindset. Now, that effort was within their control, okay? So again, what I'm saying is the children in Group A praised for their intelligence. Their intelligence is not within their control. The children in Group B were praised for their, you know, their efforts and their commitment. That was something that they could control. So moving forward, and given the opportunity to do another task, they felt that, you know, they were a lot more confident in attempting that because, you know, they were praised for that growth. Okay, they didn't have the fear that Group A had that they would no longer be intelligent. They knew that as long as they took, you know, they took a step and they took an opportunity to grow and they tried to do another task, another puzzle, they knew that they were going to be praised again. Whether they, you know, did well or they didn't, they were doing it because they were doing it, you know, for the opportunity, for the process. The lesson I'd really like you to learn, and the thing I really want you to take away from this lesson in particular, is that I want you to know how powerful, okay, it is to have that ability to rapidly differentiate between the things which you can and cannot control. The only thing you can control is you can control, I guess, the way in which and the extent to which your past, okay, controls your future. Your parents are beyond your control. Your genetics are beyond your control. Even the thoughts and feelings that pop in and out of your mind are beyond your control. You can only control the way in which you respond back to those thoughts and feelings. The most important thing that you can control is your focus, okay? What you choose to focus on. I guess the thing that we've learned in this lesson is that the most important thing to focus on is, you know, those things, those times when you've stretched yourself, okay? Those moments when you've really, you know, sort of either struggled or you've worked hard. Okay, that is the most important thing for us to focus on. When you've put in a lot of effort, you know, maybe when you've stepped out of your comfort zone, those are the most important pivotal moments, the things that we need to focus on and be aware of. The absolute most important thing to do that you can control is praising yourself in those moments. Praising yourself at the steps. Praising yourself, you know, during the process. Praise yourself for your effort, okay? That's the most important thing. Remember back in the very first episode, okay, the very first lesson, the start of the Change Your Life course, okay, the very first thing that we focused on was being able to reward yourself for those steps, okay? Not to wait or put off rewarding yourself until you have achieved those, you know, those big gigantic outcomes. Okay, remember that? If you can remember that, this might be starting to make a little bit more sense to you now as to why that was such an important thing and why I chose to start and begin these lessons with that very first lesson, because it's such a fundamental thing. What do most people do? Okay, they look for results, they look for outcomes, until they allow themselves to, reward themselves and praise themselves. Okay, they're looking outside themselves for all of this praise and these outcomes and these things that are happening. They're not looking within themselves. When you look within yourself and you can be aware of what's happening inside, okay, when you can sort of, get amongst the conversation that your inner parent, inner child are having, you're going to be better suited and better able to praise yourself and reward yourself in those moments when you really, really need it, okay? Those moments when you're struggling, when you're trying to grow. Let me share with you a real example. It's a therapeutic example, actually. Okay, so there was a therapist, and she was talking about an experience that she had with a client. Okay, so we were part of a mentoring sort of group, a mentoring session, a bunch of therapists talking about their experiences and, just having a general chat, about sort of, the good things that could have been done better, things that, perhaps we were not really sure about. Anyway, this lady was sharing a story, and she was talking about how she had a young 18-year-old girl, okay, that come to her to get help, okay? And she sat down with this young girl, across from each other. And the first thing she did was she asked this girl, okay, how can I help? This girl didn't make any eye contact at all, okay? She sort of just kept looking at the ground. Obviously, she was very upset. There was something very, something was really, really troubling her, okay? Something was really, really disturbing her. Obviously, it had taken her a lot of effort to, get out of bed just to come and seek help and then come to the therapy session. And she wasn't really able to speak. She wasn't really able to articulate what she wanted help with. So this therapist was explaining this situation to us, I guess in a negative way. Was saying, she didn't really know what to do because, the person that had come to see her couldn't articulate what she wanted or what she needed. She sort of kept poking and prodding her for half an hour, saying, what can I do? What's your problem? Where would you like to start? Just kept asking her all of these questions. This young girl couldn't speak. She was just sobbing and crying, obviously going through, a terrible time. Okay, she was there seeking help, but this therapist was focused on, rewarding the outcome. So the therapist thought, well, I'm not a good therapist. I can't achieve this goal. I keep trying to ask this girl, what's wrong? She won't answer me. This therapy's not working. There's no outcome. So after half an hour, she called the meeting off with this girl. She said, look, perhaps you could come back another time. I don't really think that we're getting anywhere today. The therapist was thinking, I can't help this girl. She came to this session. I couldn't even find out what her problem was, so I couldn't help her. I kept asking these questions. That wasn't a good, I guess, a success story, or that wasn't a good outcome for the therapist. Now, that therapist basically reported back to us that that particular session had been a failure. There was no outcome achieved. The only failure that day was that therapist's failure to recognize that if that poor young girl, had struggled so hard just to get to the session and was obviously struggling with a lot of emotions, she was sobbing, she was sad, she was crying, she couldn't speak. Obviously that girl was so overwhelmed with, these feelings and her personal problems or traumas that were affecting her in that moment, that therapist was failing to reward the girl for just making taking the effort and the time to come to the session. They might not have achieved an outcome that day, but just coming to the session was a start. It was a step. And I've heard of many sort of therapeutical situations where it actually takes, a few sessions and a bit of time for that relationship to build and for those people to open up and actually articulate their problems. And so that was a fault on the therapist's behalf, that she didn't acknowledge and reward that girl for coming into that session. You know, she could have said, I'm so glad that you made it. You know, obviously you're struggling. You know, we don't have to talk about it. If you just want to, you know, take your time and share some emotions, you know, that's great. I'd really like to thank you for just taking the steps to come in today. You know, showing some empathy. I really acknowledge, you know, how difficult this must be for you. I really acknowledge how difficult it must be to not only come to this session, but to talk. And if you don't want to talk, we don't have to. I just want you to know that what you have done today is a great thing. You've taken a step in the right direction. And really just encourage that girl to get to a point where she could feel comfortable, okay? To reward that girl for the steps she was taking, not for the outcome. And for that particular girl, depending on what her problems are or her traumas were, you know, it might take a lot of time to achieve that outcome. And if you're just purely focused on those outcomes, you're never going to be able to help, you know, this girl, and this girl's never going to be able to get help. She's never going to achieve those outcomes. If that young girl, you know, gets into a bit of a cycle where all of these different therapists she starts seeing do the same thing, okay, they tell her to go, they say, you're not doing anything, you know, I can't help you. You know, let's say, look, most likely that girl's going to give up and she's just going to think, why bother? If she does keep continually seeking help, I mean, good on her. She must be really, really, you know, tough, and she should be rewarded for that. But, you know, what kind of message is that sending to somebody that wants help or that wants to change? It's not a very good one. Now, that therapist should have known better. But we can forgive that therapist for, you know, having those thoughts, because those thoughts and those views are what most people have, okay? Most people in the world are focused on rewards and outcomes. So let me give you some harsh reality. This is going to hurt. It's not nice, but it is 100% the reality. The world outside does not give a fuck about your efforts. The world outside does not care about the effort you went through. They do not care about your struggles. Okay, people don't care that you tried really hard. Okay, people don't care that, you know, you're attempting to change or do something. The world does not care about the steps. I'm going to be brutally honest. The world only cares about your results. So don't spend your time waiting for the rest of the world to acknowledge, you know, the steps. Your parents don't care about the steps. Your teachers don't care about the steps, and your employers don't care about the steps. They don't care about how much effort you're making. If you're a student, your teachers only care about your marks, okay? They only care about your grades, okay? They only care about how you can make them look good if everybody in your class has good grades. If you are an employee, your employer only cares about, you know, how much money you can make them, how many results you can do, how many sales can you make, okay? How many, you know, customers can you make happy? How many, you know, tasks can you perform? Okay, if you run your own business, your customers only care about what you can do for them. Okay, let's say you're landscaping someone's backyard. Now, you're halfway through the job, you're doing a garden and you're putting down some turf, okay, some new lawn. You've just put down the new lawn, it looks great, it's amazing, okay, but the garden's still unfinished. That customer doesn't come out and say, oh, wow, what a good job, thank you for doing the lawn. You know, they don't come and praise you for that. To be honest with you, if it might rain, you know, a couple of days, you might be stuck on other jobs and it might take you another week or two to get back to finish the garden. I bet you that customer is probably calling you up saying, where are you? You haven't finished the job. The garden's not done. It's incomplete. Okay? Not only are they not praising you, but they're giving you, criticism over how you have not finished the job. They're reminding you that the job's not finished and that you haven't achieved that outcome or that reward. Okay, that's just the way that the world works. The world is consciously, continually conditioning us to only reward ourselves to achieve outcomes. So going out into the world, being aware of all of this, I want you to know how tough it's going to be for you to constantly keep bringing yourself back and rewarding the steps, okay? Because nobody out there is going to reward you for those steps. No one's going to reward you for watching this video. No one's going to say, hey, that's great, you're trying to change. You've done a self-help sort of course, you're trying to change your life course. No one's going to care. They're just going to ask you, what's your results? How did you do? What have you changed so far? That's all they're going to do. The world will condition you with a fixed mindset if you allow it. You and only you yourself can reprogram yourself to have a growth mindset. What we really want to do is not only reprogram that fixed mindset and create a growth mindset, but we almost sort of want to put ourselves in this protective bubble that's going to keep the world and its views and their fixed mindsets away from us so that we are able to reparent our inner child accordingly. The mindset we want to approach therapy and change with is that we don't want a fixed mindset, obviously, okay? So we don't want to look at therapy as in we are broken and we want to be fixed. We want to look at it and say we are broken, but we want to grow. The world will always expect outcomes and results from you. If, however, you wait until you achieve outcomes before praising yourself, it will condition you with a fixed mindset. The key then is to recognize each pivotal moment in time where you stretch yourself and step out of your comfort zone, and to take advantage of those pivotal moments by praising your efforts and your decision to stretch yourself irrespective of the outcome. Most importantly, practice developing the skill of letting go of those things beyond your control, and instead practice redirecting your focus towards the things within your control.